VLSos here. This is a video lesson on the magnitude function, or we often call absolute value. We have a special set of grouping symbols. They're straight vertical lines. A single one is called a pipe. So if we put an expression inside of pipes, it's inside of the absolute value bars. I call this the magnitude of x. In other words, and probably what it might have been called when it was first learned, absolute value. And what we mean by the magnitude of x is how much or what the value of x is irregardless of sign. And by sign we mean positive or negative. So if we were driving a car at 50 miles per hour in reverse, our speed would be 50 miles per hour. It'd be dangerous, but driving in reverse, even though we think of going in reverse as maybe in the negative direction and forward as the positive direction, when we consider speed, we're just considering the magnitude of our velocity. So if we have 7 inside of the magnitude bars, we're saying, what is the magnitude of 7? It's 7. In other words, 7 is a positive number, keep it positive. We'd also ask, what is the magnitude of negative 3? How much is negative 3 worth, irregardless of sign? And of course, the magnitude of negative 3 is positive 3. Abstractly, we can think the absolute value of a negative number means to change it positive. But what about a more complicated situation? In this case, the magnitude of x plus 1, or we could say the absolute value of x plus 1 minus 2 is equal to 8. Here we have a more sophisticated problem. It's an equation. Solving for x would require a few steps. We're going to use the process of undoing what we see to get x by itself. Easily done as a first step. To undo minus 2, we add 2 to the entirety of both sides. The negative 2 is outside of the absolute value bars, and so we're going to undo it with a positive 10 on the right, which leaves the magnitude or absolute value of x plus 1. In the process, what do I do at this point? I want to undo the absolute value bars. But what's the inverse of that? Let's remind ourselves that as a concept, when we take the absolute value of something, we can have a positive or negative number, and irregardless of the sign, we make it positive. So what's the inverse of that? The inverse is quite simply, if we have a positive number and we undo the absolute value bars, then we have to then consider replacing both the positive and negative version. In other words, the inverse of making something positive is making something both positive and negative. And I can use the plus minus sign to symbolize what I'm doing to both sides. Now in this case, putting plus minus sign in front of the absolute value bars is a sign to undo them. And on the other side, we literally have both the plus and minus version of 10. And now that we no longer have the absolute value bars to deal with, we can proceed with our final step, solving x by subtracting 1 from both sides. When we do, and write our final step, we have to remember that we have two solutions now at this point. We have the positive 10 minus 1 to make it 9, and we have the negative 10 minus 1 more for the negative 11 solution. Two solutions created when we undid the absolute value bars by adding both the plus and minus version to both sides.